What's up, y'all, and welcome back to Carbon Scoring, the best place for comics history and action figures. And I am so glad to have everybody with us today because we've got yet another Marvel Legends mystery box. But before we get into some of the toys that are inside this box, which includes one of the most requested and biggest Spider-Man toys ever made, I've actually got a couple of thank yous that I want to throw out at you. Since our last video premiered, we have broken the 10,000 subscriber mark, and that just makes me so excited that we started this channel about 10 months ago, and here we are at 10,000 subscribers. And you guys are great. The comments that you leave, the appreciation that you have for the videos is just unbelievable. But when you hit 10,000, that means it's time for some merch. So if you look down below this video, you can see a link to where you can buy a Carbon Scoring t-shirt or hoodie, or get a sticker for your laptop or a coffee mug. I'm going to have some of that stuff. I've got some samples coming and we'll show them in some later videos. But if you are a friend, loves Carbon Scoring, you got the holidays coming up, this is a great time to get you some Carbon Scoring merch. So that's surprise number one. I actually have a second surprise for you, and that's another thank you. Our last mystery box video was looking at Let There Be Carnage and Venom, a whole box full of symbiotes or symbiotes, or however you guys want to say it. I think after listening to all the discussion, I'm going to go with symbiotes, and we're going to stick with that as the official Carbon Scoring pronunciation, symbiotes. But there were some figures that were missing, and it was because I had no idea where they were. And I was putting away some other figures. I was sticking actually it was some Masters of the Universe figures. I was putting them into another box. And I looked and I said, hey, what are those? Yep, here they are. Here's the missing symbiote figures. So before we get into the Spider-Man box proper, let's take a look at some of these bad boys, because you know there are some good things in this box, beginning with the one and only movie Venom figure from the very first Venom movie. I know this figure topped a bunch of top 10 lists last year, and it's pretty easy to see why. It has got some really nice detail in the sculpting. It has great articulation with the way that you get some bend out of this mid-torso joint, which gives you the chance to really get into some sweet Venom poses. But for me, it's all about that head sculpt and just how terrific and movie accurate. You know, that looks like what we saw from Tom Hardy and Venom. So maybe we'll get some more figures. You know, Venom 2 has been a massive success at the box office. So hopefully we'll get to see some more figures from that. Hopefully we'll get to see a Cletus Cassidy Carnage figure from that. But in the meantime, let's just enjoy how great that first Venom figure was. Awesome. But we don't stop there. Here's our other friend, the main man, Carnage himself. And this, of course, has the head sculpt, the absolute Carnage head sculpt, with kind of the null symbol on it. You know, I proclaimed my love for the more comic version of Carnage that I had in my last box. And a lot of you were like, no, this version is so much better. And it's different. You know, these Carnage lines, the symbiote lines that are kind of running all around his body are raised. I mean, they're like sculpted in. It's not simply painted. And they're definitely a little bit thinner, a little bit more finer in detail. And I get that. I think I still kind of like the comic version better, just because that's the Carnage that I was introduced to, and that's the one that I know the best. But I totally appreciate those of you who think that this is a superior figure to that. We should have an alternate head somewhere in the box that we can take a look at in a minute. But this one I would probably leave this head on because that's more accurate to the comic interpretation of the time. But that's pretty cool. Good stuff. Then, you know, when I found this box, I really was super excited to see, you know, the Venomized version of Miles. And one, I love that this is on that smaller frame. It's on that smaller Miles Morales frame. He has brand new hands and brand new feet. You can see he's got kind of the crazy Venom feet with nice bleeding of the red kind of going across there. His spider symbol is definitely different and much more of a venomized version of that. And again, the detailed sculpting on his head with the symbiote tendrils kind of wrapping around his eyes, all of those are raised. So those actually have some texture to them. Same thing on his shoulders and on his forearms. But the giving him the much larger hands and feet really kind of monsterize this version of the character. Awesome. But my favorite in this bag for sure was the Venomized Spider-Gwen. So this is so cool and such a unique way to combine figures. So I love that she's got the little jacket, that moves around, and that the spider logo kind of wraps around from the back of her jacket, and it's fractured, so it's not your classic solid Spider-Girl, Spider-Gwen. It's a fractured one. She has the symbiote tendril things happening on her forearms, but Spider-Gwen's real design aesthetic is all about her hood. And so the artist who designed this took the aesthetic of Venom, which is that gaping jaw and tongue, combined it with the aesthetic of Spider-Gwen to create this brilliant piece where her hood is coming around like the mouth of a symbiote, like a Venom symbiote, and then it tails off to this tongue that goes all the way to the ground. And it just wraps around. And look at how much fluidity and movement they managed to get out of that sculpted piece. That is just so cool. It even has like little pecks of teeth all the way down. So again, kind of continuing that mouth tongue motif. That is a sweet comic design, and it is just completely and totally brought to life with this figure. Love it. And then who can forget the massive, I'm talking massive, Venom Pool Build-A-Figure that came with this wave. I mean, this thing is just huge. I mean, the swords could just about fit on a 12-inch figure. They're so big. They kind of snap onto the back there. You've got that terrific Deadpool head sculpt with the Venom face. And I mean, I think it goes to show just how similar in designs Venom and Deadpool are. They're essentially contemporaries as far as their time frame of creation, right there in the late 80s, early 90s. But it's a good mesh. It definitely works. So we'll put him over in the pile of figures for our guy, Deadpool. And then we did get a Lasher. And so this was sweet that I actually did find my original Lasher figure. So cool stuff. So a little bit of a bonus additional video, part of our Carnage Venom Let There Be Carnage series. But let's get to the main stars of the show, and that is this Spider-Man mystery box. And you can see this one is not just full of Marvel Legends. There are all kinds of things in here, but when we get a little bit deeper, you'll see some of the really neat stuff that's coming out. So let's just kind of grab something and get started. Yeah, all right, this is Captain Action. So I've stuffed in all the extra parts, but Captain Action was a toy line back in the late 60s that was a response to G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe hit the scene and became a huge, massive, instant sensation for Hasbro. And so Ideal Toy Company said, well, we want a piece of that. And so instead of creating just simple, army men, they created a spy character called Captain Action who could have different outfits that would, allow him to be Batman or Flash Gordon, or Tarzan or, people like that. And they were able to license both Marvel and DC characters. And if you watch my video that has all of my action figures down in the Secret Lounge, you can see I have those original Captain Action outfits. These came from around 2011, 2012. It was a redo of Captain Action. And this is one of the Spider-Man suits. I think this is actually really brilliant. I think this is probably the most accurate representation of John Romita's head. You know, those eyes and that head are just so classic John Romita Sr. I love that they included the webbing underneath his arms with this costume. Got a really, really classic, you know, 70s Romita Spidey on the back. So cool. And they did do other characters. Obviously, this is the Captain America. And they came with all kinds of extra parts. You know, there were deluxe versions of these. I think these were the deluxe versions because that's what came with Cap's shield. There were, you know, they have the different boots and stuff. And they had a Peter Parker head that came with this one too. Let's see if I can find it in the bag. Yeah. And so you could switch out Peter Parker, and that's pretty Peter, really. I mean, that, you know, that looks exactly like 1960s Peter. This line I had so much hope for because they actually incorporated a Build-A-Figure concept with it. If you got the original Marvel ones that came in this line, which were Loki, Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, Spidey, and Wolverine, if you collected all of those, each one of them came with a part, and if you bought an extra Captain Action body, you could actually make Hawkeye. So that original series had Hawkeye, and they had shown at Toy Fair or one of those things that they had the DC license, and they showed prototypes of Batman and Superman that never made it to market. And I hate that. I hate that that line died. It just didn't have the kind of support because those two would have been really incredible in addition. All right, lots of Spideys here. This, again, when we talk about retro lines, so this is a 9-inch figure from Hasbro, cloth costumed again, and very, very cool old school Ditko Spidey on the back. But we have more kind of McFarlane style eyes on the front. Does have the underarm webbing. So this was after famous covers. So the history of this is the Mego Corporation in the 70s made 8-inch cloth costume figures. They were the coolest thing going. And everybody loved them. They had both DC and Marvel characters. Plus they did like Star Trek and Planet of the Apes and all kinds of things. So in the 90s, Toy Biz brought back a line of toys called Famous Covers, which were kind of meant to be 8-inch. They ended up being about 9-inch. And they went with the cloth costumes. The Spider-Man for that actually had a cloth mask, cloth hands. I love it, but it didn't exactly work. And so later they used those same kind of body frames, but they gave them, a little bit better plastic hands and heads along with the cloth costumes to keep it going. The line never really the later line, the Hasbro line, never really took off. I think this is a similar but different one. You can see, look at how, so this would be probably kind of the early Spider-Man design. You can see the difference in the spider logo on the chest, as well as the depth of the web markings compared to this one's a much later, more 90s version. They have virtually, I think that's probably, it's a little different, but it's virtually the same head sculpt, but clear difference on the spider on the back. Very, very 60s, very Ditko, much more modern. So just two different versions of these Hasbro 9-inch cloth costume figures that I love. One of my thoughts when I hit 10,000 subscribers was to do a video specifically on Famous Covers, the 9-inch line, and that's a little bit of a passion project of mine. I'm not sure if anybody would really watch it, but if you guys are interested in a little bit more of the history of this, including getting to see the one and only Aunt May figure that has been made, let me know. Hey, and while you're at it, if you enjoy these kind of videos, if you like this sort of content, please hit like, give me a comment. Those are the actions that tell YouTube that we should send this video out to more people like us. So by hitting like and by leaving a comment, you let YouTube know to send this video to more people so that we can continue growing our community. Here's the big boy. We're going to get to him in just a little bit, but let's take a trip down a little bit of a fun road here. This was a line of figures, 2002. So this is like a play school line that Toy Biz did. Look at how adorable these figures are. There was like an attachment, like a play attachment that kind of came on the back, but I just loved this big, chunky Spidey action figure. Here's another one of basically the same one. My oldest daughter was born when these figures came out, and so I remember just being so excited that there were Spideys for kids that I could get for her. They made a Spider-Girl. I don't know if we'll run into her, but there's a cute Spider-Girl who's in like a rollerblading outfit that was a part of this line as well. Oh, and then of course you got all these sort of little fuzzy things. I don't remember what these were called. I'm sure some of y'all remember what the names of these things were, but I remember people going crazy trying to collect all the Disney versions of these, but they're just super cute little Spidey furry things. And I think I see, yeah, so here's also sort of the plastic version of this. So there's a Peter Parker one, he's sculpted all the way around. They're like little piggies almost. I bet you there's some loose ones down in the bottom of the bag also. Hey, and while we're looking at those fuzzy ones, here's a couple more. I want to say these were like blind bag sort of figures, but I got pretty lucky. I always love the look of Peter in his spider costume. So he's got the Peter Parker head with the Spider-Man body. And then, of course, here's our intrepid reporter / photographer, Peter Parker. Super, super cute. Oh, the cute stuff. I still love all the cute stuff. Now, this is not as cute, but I love it too. But look at this. So here is a 12-inch figure. I want to say this was still during the Toy Biz reign. Let's see if, yep, Toy Biz 2006 is what's listed on the leg of this. So this is almost a straight, like, 2-up of the McFarlane Spider-Man. It has those same, unique Toy Biz butterfly shoulders. Definitely has that really cool McFarlane head sculpt. And I think that looks a lot like what McFarlane was drawing when he had started the adjectiveless Spider-Man book. I love how like thin, muscular this figure is. Look at all the how just tight his muscles are, as opposed to sort of that more bulky look that you got in the Bronze Age with Romita and then his son Romita Jr. This is a definite McFarlane Spider-Man, just that lithe, gymnastic, long, lean Spider-Man. And this thing really, it'll bend. I mean, it's got a lot of articulation to it. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about articulation with our premier figure in this box. But look, each of the fingers was articulated on this figure. So you can get, grippy hands, you can get open palms, you can get a thwip action. He does have, this fairly interesting, it doesn't want to move a lot. I'd really hate to break a 15-year-old figure, but still kind of has some unique joints at the hips there. But for a 12-inch Spidey action figure, that is pretty sweet. Oh, man, it just keeps getting better. Okay, let's grab this. This is another one of my favorite lines that nobody ever talks about. These are the Mighty Mugs. So these, it even says Mighty Mugs on there. And I think I can maybe catch a year. I think that maybe says 2011. This was such a great line of kind of super deformed figures. They all had this basic body. And then, you had different designs. This is obviously a Amazing Fantasy 15 version. You can tell because that's that early Ditko logo. He's black, not blue, and he's got very, very Ditko-looking eyes. But, of course, if you can tell on the camera, this is actually cloth. So let's see what we can find. Oh, there he is. It's Peter Parker. And all of these Mighty Mugs had this great, really clean aesthetic look to them. They are just so cool. I have mystery boxes filled with all of the Mighty Mugs. So if you guys are Mighty Mug fans like I am, hopefully when we get to that mystery box, you'll love that as much as I do. But somehow this ended up in the Spidey box. But there's your Amazing Fantasy 15 Spider-Man Mighty Mug. So cool. Couple more fuzzies. Oh, look, here's another. So this is like a chew toy. Oh, this was, I'm sure I bought this for my daughter, hoping that she would someday get bitten by a radioactive spider. But that's just like it's like a baby's little toy that they can kind of teethe on. Oh, that's so great. And here's another one of those fuzzy blind bag figures. There he is. He's lurking back there. We're going to get to you, big guy, I promise. Oh, here we go. Here's the original Mighty Mug. So this gives you a better sense of what the entire Mighty Mug series looked like. And I mean, they made like 20, 25 different ones of these. I mean, they really made their way across the Marvel universe. Oh, look at that. I don't know that I've ever really paid attention to how cool and what a different type of design they use for the back spider. If you guys watch a lot of my videos, you know I'm a huge fan of the artistic interpretations of the spider on the back of Spidey's costume. And I really think it's one of the ways that most clearly differentiates different artists that have worked on Spider-Man. But I don't know, how can you not love that? I mean, how can you not fall instantly in love with a Mighty Mug? They tried to bring this line back where you like push the head and like the face would spin around. It didn't need a gimmick. Like the gimmick I thought really took away from it. It died. They got like 1 series out or 2 series out and it just completely died. Tried to do like Star Wars and things like that. Don't mess with perfection. This was perfection. Like these were before pops. All of you people out there who are buying a gazillion pops, and when I go to a show or a convention or a comic shop and there's like 800,000 pops, just remember, Mighty Mugs came first. And they were better. Says me. Okay, so here's just a good old toy. So you've seen more and more and more of these. I guess are they called like the Titan Heroes series? But it's great. You know, sometimes we all get excited about those, 25 now, even increasing price Marvel Legends figures. But sometimes kids just want a toy that they can play with. And this was one of those, kind of fairly simple articulation, basically 5 points of articulation, Spider-Man. But man, that looks like Spidey. I'll take it. I think it's pretty cool. Speaking of pops, I lied. So I am still a little bit of a sucker for pops. That's Andrew Garfield, right? Isn't that Amazing Spider-Man, the first Amazing Spider-Man movie? Because of the gold eyes. I want to say that's who that is. Sorry, buddy. And then this is not a pop. This is somebody who was like trying to capitalize on pops. That says 2011. Still kind of a bobblehead. I do dig the more circular eyes going around it, but not quite as cool as the pop aesthetic. Oh, cool. Sweet. So here's more of that 9-inch Hasbro line. So obviously Black Suit Spider-Man. And they made that in the original Famous Covers line as well. But this is just so well done. I really like it because I think that this size of eyes really goes along with sort of the Ron Frenz look, who was the artist on Spider-Man when I first started reading the book and is still one of my top 5 Spider-Man artists to this day. He was the one who really was the main storyteller during the original run of Spidey in the black suit. And I think that this figure captures his aesthetic really well. Plus, it's hard to go wrong with that all black suit. It hides some of the evils that this body underneath has. They're not quite, they're still a little bunchy. Some of the cloth, it doesn't quite fit skin tight. You can see there's a clear separation between the plastic of the feet and the bodysuit, so he's kind of wearing slacks, it looks like, but I still love these cloth costume figures. All right, now you want to talk about some crazy stuff. So when I was in graduate school, Halloween was like a big deal, and we would, really, really dress up. And so I actually made a homemade Spider-Man suit. And so this is 25 years old, but this was my oh so creepy mask. And if you think it looks creepy like this, you should have seen it on my head. So it's basically just pantyhose that I've kind of bunched up so that it would kind of cover up over my head. And then this is, I think, just white out, or maybe it's white pen marker where the red over the years has really bled through. And then I drew out the web pattern on it. I wore this out in public. To a function with adult humans. And not only did I do that, we went to one party at one of my friend's apartments who lived on the second floor, but he had like a trellis outside and a balcony. And yes, in the middle of a city, I actually, in full Spider-Man costume, climbed up the outside trellis to the second floor and entered the party through a back window. Because I was Spider-Man, right? And that makes sense. I mean, all of that makes perfect sense. And, if you need to have some Spidey nightmares, that's where that's going to come from. But I'm glad I saved this because Man, I had a lot of good memories in that mask. Not only fighting crime, but getting into constant trouble. Speaking of homemade costumes, look at that transition. The bombastic Bagman. I wish he had the kick me sign on the back. If you've watched my top 10 Spider-Man figures video, you know how much I love the bombastic Bagman. So this was a one-off, one-story appearance. Basically, the story behind it was the black suit was giving Spidey trouble. He knew something was wrong. He knew something wasn't right, but he wasn't sure. And so he took Reed Richards up on his offer to analyze it. So he swings over to the Baxter building wearing the black suit. They run a bunch of tests, and Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, tells Pete it's alive, that the suit is actually a symbiote, and it's trying to bond to your body. And so through actually having to use some sonic blasting, they get it off of Peter. But he's got to go home and he doesn't have any clothes because he came over in the black suit. So Johnny Storm hooks him up with an old FF uniform. I love it when they make sure to get the straps that go around his feet, and gave him just a plastic bag for a mask. But the final kicker was Johnny taped a "kick me" sticker to the back of it as Spidey swung home, and he broke up a robbery, and everybody was like, "What are you? Are you a new superhero? Is this a tryout?" But so awesome that Pops made the bombastic Bagman. Love it. More of these dudes. Oh, actually, it's all the little sizes. I think you're supposed to like stack them up or something. Oh, there's another one. So I don't know. Y'all tell me what these things were. I just don't remember. That one's a little bit different. So he's a little harder plastic, where these are more almost like a racer sort of textured plastics. Scarlet Spider hanging around, little miniature Scarlet Spider bobblehead. Here's another one of the 3 3/4 inch figures that I still think they crushed it on the body and absolutely flopped on the head sculpt. I mean, God, it's your flagship character. You know, it is the #1 character in the Marvel Universe. Just take that head sculpt back to the drawing board. That looks terrible. Oh, my favorite Spider-Man cartoon, Spectacular Spider-Man. I think this was a Burger King Happy Meal toy. Let's see if it says on here. It may or may not. Oh, he used to light up. Oh, no, he didn't light up. He pops his wings out. Looks like his wings just kind of loop back on there. But the best cartoon ever. Again, if you want to watch another video, I did do a full video on Spectacular Spider-Man explaining how it is the best Spider-Man cartoon of all time. Another little fuzzy Spidey. One last thing before we get to the start of the show. This was actually a keychain, and 1997 is what that says. I had this on my keys for years and years and years. The little keychain part has broken off, but I think I got this maybe, I don't know where I got this. Oh, that's sad. I normally remember all of those things, but this was on my keys for 10 years probably before it finally broke off. But let's get to the star of the show, the figure that you guys have been clamoring for, have been asking about. I've probably gotten more comments about this one than anything else. This is probably the most requested figure in my top 10 Spidey list of how on earth could I have forgotten the 18-inch Spider-Man figure from the Spider-Man 2 movie. And you're right, it is utterly fantastic. So while I sit here and play with this thing and go through some of its, I think it was advertised to have 68 points of articulation. While I sit here and show you all of that articulation, I'm going to tell you the story as I remember it of this figure, because I think it's a pretty good one. So let's jump back in the Wayback Machine. Let's get into our time machine and go back to 2004 when this figure first debuted. So this figure came out with the Spider-Man 2 movie. And yeah, kids, the internet did absolutely exist in 2004, but it still wasn't quite the internet that we know today. I mean, there was no Twitter, there was no Instagram, there was, was there Facebook? I don't even think there was Facebook at that time. And so, there were websites, and that was kind of how you started to get your toy information. You got it really from two different sources. You got it from websites, and the one that I was so active on was the Raving Toy Maniac message board. That was kind of my introduction into the world of collecting and the great people that were in that world. That message board was basically just a 24/7 conversation between people like us. It was witty. There were some great personalities. People were helping each other out. They were sharing information. And it was the place where you learned what was going on. But more than anything like that, it was so fun. It was a true community. The RTM Raving Toy Maniac message board. It was my favorite place. And it was, I found it when I was in my postgraduate studies, which was not a great time of life. And I'm telling you, it helped me get through. Like going on there and just reading some of the witty banter, just the intelligent comments. It made me realize that, this is a hobby that is filled with smart, cool people. We weren't cool back then. We were still kind of outcast. The world hadn't caught up to us yet. But that was like a happy place for me. And I would love it if there's anybody that watches my videos that was on those message boards back in the day. If you'll just kind of throw in the comments like what your tag name was. Mine was Thwip. I didn't post a lot, but I can promise you I was on there reading it every single day. So that was one place where you got toy information. The other place was in the now long gone magazine Toy Fair. And back then, magazines were still fast enough to keep up with toy news. A lot of toy companies would save exclusive premieres for the magazine, so they would hold stuff back from the internet as best as they possibly could so that it could premiere, so the information could premiere in the magazine. And you'd learn a lot about, toys from that as well. But not this one. I distinctly remember that this bad boy was not talked about on RTM. He was not debuted in Toy Fair. I walked into the Walmart in my local town in 2004, and there on the shelves is 18 inches of Spider-Man goodness with 68 points of articulation. It was like he just appeared out of nowhere. Like they actually managed to keep this behemoth of a figure. I mean, this thing is huge. They kept this thing a secret. That's a 9-inch figure. That is like 3 inches taller than a Marvel Legend. I'm sure I have a Marvel Legend around here somewhere. Here's a relatively big Marvel Legend. And this thing is just monstrous. And nobody knew that it was coming out. Nobody knew this thing was going to appear on toy shelves. It just magically formed in the ether. It was unbelievable. And then as soon as, and of course back then distribution was really crazy. Like, you could say somebody could see one in, Kansas on Saturday, and by Monday they were everywhere. Like every Walmart in America had them. And it just was a sensation at the time. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. And it truly did. I mean, it came from nowhere. And those days are gone. Like all of us now, I mean, I pretty much pre-order all of my action figures. I mean, there's no surprises. They just show up in a box on my doorstep about a year or 6 months or whatever after I actually ordered them. But this is like one of the last times that I remember being truly surprised that there was an action figure, something this incredible that I had no idea was coming. And you can see, I mean, it's got, the ratchets. Look at this. It's, it bends here, here, and here. I mean, you can get a tremendous amount of crunch out of this huge, huge figure. I mean, you can get him into all of these awesome Spidey poses. You can see the level of detail. I always loved Sam Raimi's Spidey on the back. I think that out of the non-traditional, non-comic Spidey on the backs, Sam Raimi's design was definitely one of my favorites. They've got the mesh of the suit, really, really nicely done musculature of the back. He's not overly muscular though. Sometimes the movie figures can get a little bit big. This one's not. He's really, again, it's hard to make a figure this big in proportion, but that is still, like, if you look at it from a distance, like when it's far away, that could be a Marvel Legend. If you don't recognize the scale of this thing, that could still be a Marvel Legend. But boy, when you pick it up, you know that it is something different. You know, double hinge knees, hips. He's got 3 points of articulation through his feet. Like, you can really get him into some poses, plus really, really effective ankle rockers. This is a special piece, the kind of thing that we just probably won't see again. I mean, look, fist, every finger, every joint of every finger is articulated. And so, you know, you can do all the dirty things, but you can do anything. I mean, even his thumb has a hinge there, and at the little point. It is just a piece of art. And for it to be a surprise made it that much better. So can't end on a better note than the Spider-Man 2 18-inch figure. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please give me a like, leave me a comment. If you were somebody who was on that RTM message board, I would love to know about it, because, you know, I'm not going to go to my high school reunion, but if we had an internet reunion of RTM, I would most assuredly show up for that. But in the meantime, keep watching our videos, keep watching Carbon Scoring for more fun, and I will see you guys soon.